I don't like the sixth night in Five Nights at Freddy's. As in, it doesn't feel like a necessary night to put in the game. Sure, I get the horror and thrill of adding an additional harder night to the game to keep the game fresh and slightly longer, along with the pretense that there was only ever 5 nights, and a sixth night would be absolutely terrifying, but there's really nothing for you if you already know what you're doing, as you already have the custom night if you want to challenge at your own pace. There's no phone call to liven up the lore, or to give you a fear factor, and there's no incentive at all to stay a sixth night until after the fact with a paltry amount of overtime. The only difference between nights 5 and 6 that even adds to the gameplay experience is the AI going from 3, 5, 7, 5 to 4, 10, 12, 16. A harder Bonnie and Chica, a minuscule change in Freddy's behavior, and Foxy being an authentic Foxy experience. The night is one of the most boring and repetitive of the series, and I don't even know what it stands for. If it's a bonus night, then why does the custom night exist? If it's the final night, then why is it so empty? I felt so underwhelmed in the first Five Nights at Freddy's game for its sixth night, and then I realized the future games mostly fixed this issue for me by adding bosses to its final nights. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was the first game in the franchise to introduce a final boss into the series, with Fredbear and Nightmare. This is where all the other animatronics in the game stop attacking you to make room for the big bad of the game to take center stage and harass you. Almost all of the games following this have at least one boss fight in them as well, with Sister Locations Entered and Security Breach's main trio being the standouts here. But since this was a trend started in FNAF 4, we really don't get a boss fight for Five Nights at Freddy's 1, 2, or 3. Mostly because those games don't really need boss fights, as they are perfectly fine standalone games, but then again, Night 6, while fine on its own, is a little lackluster compared to all the other nights. So I'm going to attempt to add a boss to this game, just like in Five Nights at Freddy's 4, 5, and Breach. And in this series, I'm going to be making a final boss for each of the Five Nights at Freddy's games that doesn't already have one, starting with the one that started it all, Five Nights at Freddy's. Picture this. Instead of Night 6 just being a harder Night 5, you first open the cameras and Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy are nowhere to be found. Nowhere on the cameras. Pirate's Cove is clean open with no one there. It's just Freddy staying the exact same. Player has no idea what's going on. They just beat the hardest night, and now the harder night 6 is just Freddy? Then he turns towards the camera and shatters it, giving that camera the same qualities as the one in the kitchen. It's now you against him. Freddy in this night, just like in the previous ones, will never backtrack, so it's important in this first phase to keep a close eye on him, as you have nobody else to worry about. Freddy cannot move off of the camera when you're directly looking at him at this night. After looking at him for long enough, he will smash the camera, making its visual feed similar to that of the kitchen's. It is also important to note that if you don't look at Freddy in the cameras, he will not destroy said camera. And while this makes Freddy go by a lot faster, it might be useful for the second half of the night to keep some of those cameras intact. After there are no more cameras in his path, or you just let him walk up to your door, he will do the same loop as standard gameplay, showing up at 4B, and if you aren't looking at him, trying for the door. And if he fails, he goes back to camera 4A. Seems simple, really. But then the obvious strategy here is to just keep looking at Freddy, eventually lose all your cameras, and then do the same loop for 420 on him. After all, you got much less power to reserve, right? That's where the second part of this night comes in. At 3 a.m., the halfway point, where Freddy should be at your office, you may notice your power start to drop drastically, almost as if someone's draining it. Turns out, Golden Freddy is also active in this night, and the vengeful spirit that it is not dissuaded by Freddy's solo act. Golden Freddy will manifest in any of the cameras other than 4A and 4B, and stay there like a lifeless corpse, with a higher chance of showing up in any camera that you let Freddy destroy. After 5 or so seconds of manifesting, their eyes will start to glow, and they will start emanating garbage noise. While they're in this state, power will drain, adding another black and distorted bar to your usage meter. To get rid of this effect, you need to stare at Golden Freddy for around 3 seconds in the cameras. The problem with this is that you can only hear the garbage noise if you're directly looking at the camera that Golden Freddy is on. What's even worse is that if Freddy destroyed the camera that Golden Freddy is on, you have to wait and listen for the garbage noise that slowly becomes more loud the longer you're on the said camera, instead of just looking at him and seeing he's there. So if you have a bunch of destroyed cameras, you have to patiently shift through all of them in order to find Golden Freddy. Getting rid of Golden Freddy by looking at the camera for around 3 seconds makes him go away and stops his attack on your power. He will go on cooldown from attacking from around 6 seconds if the camera was broken to 10 seconds if it wasn't, all adjusted to be even shorter as the night goes on. However, if the camera was not destroyed and you catch them without their eyes glowing, they can still be dismayed before they even start to steal your power. After this, he will respawn on a different camera after taking around 10 or 5 seconds to respawn, depending on if the camera was broken or not. All these times will change depending on the hour, with him getting more aggressive as the night goes on, with it taking anywhere from 15 seconds before you see Golden Freddy again, to having your power drained 5 seconds after you dissuade him at your worst. This way, it's not an active stall fest with the doors, but an actual Riskin reward system, as you can theoretically beat the night in multiple ways with this system in mind. You could let Freddy get right to your door, instantly locking on to Golden Freddy and dissuading him, and repeating. You could stall Freddy for as long as possible and risk Golden Freddy getting on those inactive cameras, or you could do a mix of both, leaving some cameras away so Golden Freddy isn't too much of a problem, while still giving you enough time to dissuade Freddy before your power goes out in the first place. Heck, this could even be used for a potential 520 mode where Golden Freddy can both appear in your office and drain power on a separate camera if you really want to implement it that way. This is just a simple concept for a fun boss fight with the Five Nights at Freddy's style, with one big threat attacking you directly and another attacking your resources, needing to manage both and leverage in order to beat the final night, while being able to be approached in multiple ways, just like in the original Five Nights at Freddy's. I want to know what you all thought of this concept I cooked up in around 10 hours. Leave a concept if you agree or think this should be approached a little differently. Oh, right, and before you go, I do need to say what the reward is for beating this harder night, as it's slightly different from overtime pay. Now, after all of this is done, and you beat Freddy at his own game, what do you think you get? A pink termination notice for property damage. Fazbear Entertainment will be billing you the rest of the damages for the cameras, so in a blind fit of canon rage, you go back to tamper with the animatronics for 420 mode and get a restraining order instead for night 7.